Hey, am I live? I think I'm live. Awesome. Okay, that's awesome. Here, let me see if I can hear. I can't hear myself, so my audio is doing okay. I think I'm at home, so it's I get a little bit paranoid using OBS because of it's weird and decides to change its settings every half hour. So I'm glad to know that it seems to be working. I am killing some stuff because, and I know you guys all think this is extremely fascinating, but this, my computer doesn't have a lot of memory, or streaming uses up an inordinate amount of memory. That's not what I wanted. I see people in the chat. That's what I wanted. So, howdy, Ro and Judy. And yes, it is riveting. It is riveting. So, anyway, I'm Professor Perks, and I advocate for the advancement of astronomy. And well, today, unlike what I said that I was basically going to stop doing last time I was online, I'm not really going to talk about astronomy per se. I'm going to be talking about science denialism in the form of religious fervor. And there's a couple reasons for that. Now, I just lost it. Completely lost it. Oh, my interesting tidbit. In that video that I said that I was basically done trying to debunk flat Earth and other things, I got contacted by someone from Tychosium, Patrick from Tychosium, who I haven't dealt with in a long time. And he was like, hey, I guess he figured, hey, what about Tychosium? So I will be addressing that at some point. To kind of recap what was going on there was that Mr. Simon Shack wrote a book which described a new neo-Tychonic geocentric model, which Patrick then coded. It's a very, very nifty bit of coding. It's a very nifty system. The only problem with it is that it's wrong. And I highlighted that in months ago when I was demonstrating the accuracy or comparing the positions of planets using the Tychosium model and using stellarium. I think it was stellarium, which is basically the 19. I can't remember. Stellarium uses some kind of JPL ephemeris. I can't remember from what year it was created. So basically, it was comparing Tychosium to modern estimates, and they were off by many arc minutes, many arc minutes. And I was then going through the book, basically chapter at a time, because I honestly found the book to be extremely frustrating. And given how I do things, that was the best way I could go about doing it. However, in a conversation with Simon Shack, he was not thrilled with the idea that I would go through chapter by chapter and I would mention things that I would say things like, I don't know where this is coming from, or, blah, blah, blah. And he basically asked me or at some point I promised that I would no longer talk about that model until I had finished his book, his 41 chapter book. I mean, this is a pretty hefty book, which irritates me. So, yeah, I haven't done it. I've read a couple of chapters. I think I'm now up to chapter 12. And yeah, but anyway, I will be addressing the model because apparently Patrick has added quite a lot to it. And so I need to get back with him to schedule a time where he can come on and maybe Simon Shack can come on and we can discuss things. I'd rather do it that way than hold to the promise that I made to stick with reading the entire book, because there are just certain basic principles that are just wrong. And it doesn't matter what you have to say at the end. It's basically your initial premise is wrong. And so you're building on a wrong premise. And it just keeps adding more things that are just aggravating. Like, for example, one of the biggest problems, and this has nothing to do with science religion, is that one of the reasons why their model does not work is that Kepler very much showed that that uniform circular motion does not fit Tycho's observations. That was the big thing that Kepler, it's the 8 arc-minute problem, is that the best model that he could come up with for the neo-Tychonic model had a discrepancy in Mars's position by 8 arc-minutes. Tycho's observations were held to be accurate to 1 arc-minute. So this is a problem. This is a real discrepancy that he could not get this to work. The only way that he could get it to work was using eclipses. Using ellipses, coming up with his planetary laws. Now, in a certain chapter, Mr. Shack goes into a great deal of detail during this period, the history of this period, and lo and behold, completely omits anything to do with Kepler. And I don't know why, and it's aggravating to me because it seems extremely disingenuous. But anyway, that should be coming up at some point, sometime, somewhere. So why am I talking about science and religion again? Well, the primary motivator is the new EPA director, or Trump's EPA administrator. Now, I'm going to make a caveat here. Because of the current climate, particularly at George Mason University, I'm not going to go into it, but the Justice Department, the U.S. Justice Department, is investigating George Mason University for violating Title IX practices, in the sense that the university is hiring based on race and gender, and therefore showing discrimination against essentially white men. Not going to go into that. But in addition to that, we then, the faculty senate then put out a statement basically supporting the university's president, Gregory Washington, and his handling of essentially DEI sort of, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, DEI initiatives. Basically, we put out a statement saying, yeah, we like our president and what he's done. The Justice Department reacted to this by opening an investigation on the faculty senate. So, because of my ties with a certain space program or space mission, as peripheral as they may be, I need to police my statements to not be overly critical about the Trump administration, for better or for worse. I'm just putting that out there as a now you know. So the NASA or the EPA administrator basically is pushing back regulation that states that using fossil fuels and causing greenhouse gases is no longer endangering the environment. He basically is saying that the things that science has stated repeatedly are causing or prompting or driving climate change. These are no longer hazardous to the environment, because the idea here is that such regulations are hampering industrial growth. They're hampering our ability, the United States' ability to produce energy, and that is causing economic shortfalls for the American public. So that's their position. I'm not going to talk about that. Not going to talk about that at all. What I am going to talk about, though, is how he went around actually stating this. So I can't find the exact tweet, quote, whatever. I found the part that is most interesting, though. He effectively calls climate change a hoax. I can't remember if he used human-caused climate change, but the three words climate change and hoax were all used at the same time, and the word not was not in that sentence. But he also said, where is it? Did I lose it? Probably. So this is from MSNBC. Take it or leave it. The EPA, under the direction of Administrator Lee Zeldin, appears increasingly serious about scrapping the endangerment finding. This is the finding the EPA put into effect in 2009 that basically said carbon dioxide production is actually harmful to the environment. A rule that serves as a fulcrum of U.S. climate action. Increasingly serious about scrapping the endangerment finding, a rule that serves as the fulcrum of U.S. climate action. If you get rid of this finding, then basically the U.S. government has very little standing upon which to regulate things that that science tells us that are in fact leading to climate change. Or to borrow Zeldin's words, quote, the holy grail of the climate change religion, end quote. Hopefully now you can see why I felt the need to talk about science and religion on today. Let's see. All right. Ro, I just saw that you. That's an interesting suggestion, and yeah, we could talk about that later. But where's I going with this? So yeah, he calls science religion, or implies that science is religion. In my experience, there is only one group of people who does this: flat earthers. The only people that I have encountered that this is a common refrain amongst them, that science is a religion, are people who believe that the earth is flat. I'll just leave right there. Young earth creationists, some of them will say that. Usually those will also be the flat earthers among them. I don't believe I have heard people like Will Duffy or and I'm forgetting Danny Faulkner or anyone else, say that science is a religion. But yeah, that's the only people I've heard say this. So to hear the EPA administrator using language that is the same as the language being used by people who believe the earth is flat is fucking alarming to me. So I felt the need to talk about this subject again. Carbon dioxide is what plants eat. Plants are what humans eat. Carbon dioxide is not a poison. I did not say that carbon dioxide is a poison. I said that carbon dioxide production by industry is driving climate change, which is an existential threat to the planet. And I am not one to be hyperbolic. So please believe me that this is something that I have looked into, and this is something that I believe is a grave threat to humanity. Prior to about 2 years ago, I would have actually ranked it higher on the list of existential threats than nuclear war. Now, who knows? Howdy, Maya. And Robert, I don't know if you were being facetious with that remark or not, but I just wanted to clarify just for anyone who's watching it. So the other reason is I am reading. There it is. excuse me, I'm reading a book, as one does. But in this case, dear friends and neighbors, I'm reading it so that you don't have to, because I'm that kind of guy. Because I love y'all. I am doing this so that you don't have to. The book in question is called A Fool's Wisdom. Sorry, lost the title. Nope, that's not what I wanted. A Fool's Wisdom, Science, Conspiracies, and something else. I'm currently looking at Chapter 2, Physics, Power, and Secrets. I don't think I can actually find it. It is written by Dr. Dr. Stephen Young, who gained his PhD in physics at Exeter. And his PhD, I haven't looked through I honestly haven't read through the dissertation, I've only skimmed it, but it has something to do with atomic physics. Well, long story short, he couldn't get a job after he got his PhD. He became a DJ, and then somewhere along the lines, he either lost his mind completely or decided to become a grifter. Because now, he fervently does not believe that atoms exist. He believes that chemistry is actually a byproduct of alchemy. He believes the Earth is flat, and his arguments are straight from 2018. Planes tipping their nose, things of that nature. Things that have been talked about and explained ad nauseum over the years. And he's still putting them forth. So, let's see. Yeah, I did find it. Okay, so he also uses a particular word that I first heard from Orphan Red, who I had this soft spot in my heart for Orphan Red. She was interesting, to say the least. She was one of the first flat earthers that I was familiar with. And to this day, I don't know if she was pulling a gigantic prank, but she would drink wine in a negligee and talk in a really high, silly voice about the Earth as being flat. So, yeah, but she coined a term that I heard for the first time, and that term is scientism. So, Dr. Young states, quote, modern science, or more specifically, scientism, with a capital S for some reason, is a worldview that is stubbornly committed to being godless, soulless, and spiritless, in spite of any and all evidence to the contrary. Of course, it's not exactly news that scientism is a godless creed that has been the default position since the 17th century. Citation needed. So here we have this idea that science is, he later puts on, says that it's a religion, but he basically refers to it as oddly enough, an atheistic religion, godless and, evil and whatnot. Well, folks, I can tell you this. I've read this, Introduction to Modern Climate Change, and I've read this, The Catechism of the Catholic Church, and it was the best reading I have ever done. So, what I'm trying to say is that on my top shelf, those are science textbooks. This shelf and this shelf are theology books. By Barth, by Brown, by Bonhoeffer, to name a few. I have done science, and I have looked into theology. I would say that I have more than the average person's understanding of what a religion is and what science is. And they ain't even close to being the same. The only things they have in common are they ask a question that is similar on its face. Where do we come from? For science, that question is just simply mechanical, meaning, where did we come from in terms of physical phenomenon? Did we evolve from a rock? Did we evolve from chimps? Or did just we magically poof into existence because someone sneezed? That is what science is interested in terms of that question. Now, if you ask someone who is a theologist, or hell, even a philosopher, where do we come from? That is an entirely different question. Because then you get into questions like the soul. Where did the soul come from? Is there a soul? What about consciousness? What is consciousness? What does consciousness mean to having a soul? Howdy, Coco. I guess, howdy, Coco. These are completely separate. They are the same question, but they are asking two drastically different things. When it comes down to the difference, as I see it, between science and religion, is a matter of dogma. Now, and, flat earthers would wholly disagree with me, and there's a whole lot of projection going on, but here's the thing. In principle, in the colloquial use of the word theory, not the scientific use of the word theory, science is objective, completely objective, meaning that it is driven by data, unbiased by personal worldviews, personal philosophy. It is the data that dictates the universe. It is the data that dictates reality, not what we believe reality should be dictating the data. Now, is that what is actually happening on the ground? Fuck no. We're humans. We're flawed. And we are very fallible. And so it is extremely, if not impossible, for us as human beings to completely divorce ourselves from our upbringing, the environment we were raised, the genetics that we have. These shape our worldview, and it is impossible for us to be completely objective about anything at all. Sorry, I was going to make a certain joke about the certain administration. I can't do that. See the beginning of this lecture, or this lecture, this talk. It is completely, it is impossible to be objective about anything. But as a scientist, we realize this, or at least I think an honest, good scientist realizes this and understands that they need to be very specific or very careful to only say or only interpret what the data is actually saying. It's okay to be speculative. It's okay to suggest various things. But those various things ultimately have to be supported by observation or experimentation. If they are not, then they need to be put by the wayside. They cannot be clung to as if they are true because it sounds really, really cool, really, really nifty. For example, I really love the idea of a ever-expanding universe, of a Big Bang or an expansive universe reaching a certain stage and then falling back and then doing that again, doing an eternal cyclical process of creation and destruction. I have an Ouroboros on my arm to represent how much that ideal means to me. This goes back to my, Wiccan days, about cycles of death and birth, death, and rebirth. However, that's not what's going to happen. And I realize that. The data, basically, if the data precludes any scenario of the universe's ending, it pretty much has precluded the idea of a big crunch. It's not going to do that. There's no evidence to support that at all. And actually, there is contrary evidence to that. So therefore, it is not appropriate for me to say, well, cosmology is just full of shit and all of these people are just religious fanatics. And really what is going on, trust me, wink, wink, is that the universe will in fact collapse back down again because reasons. No, I have to go where the evidence takes me. I can't really read the chat either, although I'm being distracted by it now. Yes, Judy. Judy says my belief is that science and religion are compatible, even though they ask/answer different questions. Yes, I fully agree with that. There is a book by Adam Frank. I think I took it to the office. He is an atheist, but he recognizes the power of religion. For him, the power of religion is what he would refer to as spiritual inspiration. And he agrees that science and religion on the face are not competitors. They are actually partners moving forward, in that it is the divine spark, as it were, within all of us that prompts us to use our imagination, use our curiosity to figure out where everything is. So I fully agree with that. So God got pissed and at Russia and Japan again. Sucks. But anyway, where was I? Objectivity. Humans can't be objective, but we can strive to be. And that, I think, is one of the most critical things about science, and I think needs to be taught and needs to be emphasized through science communication, is that we only know as much as the data tells us. Being speculative is all good and dandy. This planet's made out of diamonds. Maybe. Probably. But probably not in the way you're thinking it is. You think of diamonds. And we could be completely wrong. Because there might be something going on there that we don't quite understand, or someone hasn't been clever enough to think about. So we need to, but that's where the inspiration, in my opinion, comes from, is because there are so many unanswered questions. We need to inspire people to answer them. We need to inspire people to go out and actually get the answers to them. So as scientists, we need to recognize, and again, the power of science education needs to emphasize that we don't know everything. Science cannot tell us everything at the present moment, and if I'm to be honest, I don't think it ever will or ever can. But we need to accept that. We also need to accept that science is provisional. It changes based on new data. Not a chemist, so there's something like phlegmatic, whatever the hell it is, and then the caloric theory of energy. Completely different ideas about how chemical reactions work. You've got the Copernican revolution. You've got the general relativity. You've got quantum mechanics. You have all of these things which have been radical changes to our basic understanding of what the actual causes for physical phenomenon are. You know, you can quibble about, we still use classical mechanics in certain regimes, but ultimately, if you're looking for the root cause of what makes things go, or what makes things, then you have to actually go to relativity and quantum mechanics, at least at present. And that wasn't the case in the 19th century. So I'm hoping that in this 21st century, we will actually move past general relativity and quantum mechanics into some kind of marriage of the two. That being said, again, going back to the fact that humans are fallible, all that kind of good stuff. Howdy, Stephanie. Science does, get it wrong sometimes. Science does put forward a sort of absolutist view about something, and that absolutist view is wrong. Mainly, I'm looking at you, medical industry. Fucking pick a side. Eggs good, eggs bad. I don't know. I ain't got time for this. I gotta eat breakfast. So, when science starts taking an absolute position on something, when science becomes dogmatic, that is when science no longer is science. So it pains me to say this, and I've said this before, but Sabina Hassenfeder has this huge axe to grind against the high-energy physics community, particularly dark matter cosmologists. Do I think she has a point that too much attention has been and too much funding has gone to the particle nature of dark energy, the particle nature of dark matter? And do I believe the reason for such is because these folks are incapable or unwilling to admit that we haven't found it yet, and maybe this isn't the answer we should be looking for. Maybe we shouldn't be putting all of our eggs in one basket. Do I believe that they are unwilling to do that in some sense? Yes, I do. Because scientists will sometimes put blinders on and will just, all right, this is what we know, this is what we're working on, and we're just unwilling to take a risk. We're unwilling to explore possibilities that are not well supported from a funding position. So yes, do I think she has a point in that? Yes. Do I think that the high energy communities / dark matter particle physicists are simply in it for the money? That's fucking absurd. Trust me, we don't get paid that much. No one in our field pays that much to be that obstinate and stubborn in their field of study. So, howdy, Clive. Sorry you're late. Yeah, I said some really amazing things about aliens. Sorry you missed it. Yeah, it sucks. Oatmeal. Cats are murderers. Anyway, ADHD coming at you again. So, dogmatic viewpoint. Is dogmatism, is there a dogmatic aspect to science? Yes, because we are human beings. Does it belong there? No, it does not. And we as scientists need to take steps to prevent it from taking over. We need to take steps from mitigating the damage that it causes. Because it does cause damage, because it hampers, it retards the growth of our understanding. Because that is not data-driven. Dogmatism. So, that to me is the key difference between science. Oh, that's what I remember what I was going to say. Science, cosmology particularly, has been accused of actually having a worldview. Having two worldviews, basically. One of them I don't think is earned. The other one I can see an argument for. The first one is that, as Dr. Young puts it, science is godless. Science puts forward an atheistic worldview. It does not. It does not at all, because divine nature of things is metaphysics, and science has nothing to say about metaphysics. Nothing. Metaphysics, by its very nature, cannot be tested. It cannot be observed in a controlled environment. Therefore, it's not science. Therefore, science can say nothing about it. So if a scientist comes to you and says, because of some scientific phenomenon, there is no God, then he's trying to sell you something. Conversely, if he says, or if a physicist comes to you and says, because of this phenomenon, there is a God, then he's trying to sell you something. And that something is a worldview. Science simply informs on the physical nature of things. What you do with that nature, or what you do with that knowledge, and how you apply it to your own understanding of how the world and universe works, then that's a you thing. That's completely up to you. And it's perfectly valid. If you want to look at the universe and say, you know what, I look at this universe and I cannot imagine a God existing, given all of these different factors that I see in the universe. Okay. I look at that same universe and I say that there is no way, any doubt, that there is a divine presence. Same science, different conclusions. That is where the worldview comes in. So science does not support an atheistic worldview. It doesn't support any kind of religious atheist worldview at all. It has nothing to say about good and evil. It has nothing to say about the moral quandaries of topics such as divorce or abortion or gender politics or gender identity. There's nothing to say on those things. Well, it does have something to say about gender identity, simply that the concept of a binary gender is not accurate from a scientific standpoint. So I guess it does actually say something about that. But whether or not we should allow trans folks to use which bathroom, science doesn't have anything to say about that. It just says that trans folks are a thing. Deal with it. So this interpretation that science puts forth in atheistic worldview, that's a you problem. It doesn't. And there's nothing to support that it does. Now, from a cosmological standpoint, there is a certain, I guess you could say, worldview, and that is the cosmological principle. And the cosmological principle states that effectively that the universe is the same everywhere. The physics of the universe are the same everywhere on large enough spatial scales. If you want to get strict enough, then physics is the same any-when on long enough scales. And there is no particular location that is preferred. There is no absolute frame of reference from which all observations are true, whereas another frame of reference, they're not. Some people have interpreted that as stating that the Earth holds no special place. Again, from a physical standpoint, that is accurate. From a physical standpoint, the Earth is no different or no more important or special than any other point in the universe. It doesn't affect gravity differently. It doesn't cause it's not the point at which all things rotate. It is not the birthplace of the universe. There is nothing about the Earth that physically makes it any different than any other part of the universe when you're talking about generalities, general nature of reality. Again, whether or not you want to state that makes the Earth insignificant, that goes towards a judgment, some kind of subjective judgment as to the quality of the Earth. No preferred direction either. Thank you, Clive. So, yes, isotropic and homogeneous. It's the same everywhere and it doesn't have a preferred direction. So when you start making statements like significant, meaning special in that we are better, morally better, or worth more, or things of that nature, that is all subjective reasoning. That is all subjective, how you feel about that. Stating that the Earth is one of billions of planets and it is not significant in any way because it's one of billions, that's a physical statement. That is just a statement of fact. Earth is one of billions of planets. Okay. There you go. You can do with that however you want. What you do with that, though, moves beyond the scope of science. Unless you're going to take that and say, all right, because of all these different planets that we see, I am going to refine the physical model of which describes where these planets formed. Hopefully you can get where I'm going with this. Things such as whether or not we are worth saving as a humanity is not something that is data-driven. That is emotional. Whether or not you hold that human life is sacred or not, that is emotional. There is no data to suggest whether or not life is sacred. You can make an argument that if you're, sci-fi likes to do this all the time. If the motivation is to save the most life that you can possibly save, then killing off humanity is actually a pretty good thing. Because we're causing, again, going back to climate change, we are very much attributing to a mass extinction event. So killing us all off would actually, in the long run, be better for all the rest of the species on this planet. An argument can be made for that. Do I make that argument? Fuck no. It's an absurd argument, in my opinion. Hence why it is made by robots in sci-fi. Do we have the bestest planet? I don't know. I loves me some Pluto. TRAPPIST-D is looking pretty good these days too. TRAPPIST-1D. Anyway, it's got great curves. Anyway, sorry. So yeah. So science. Not dogmatic. Not to say there is no dogma within science, but it is only there because we as humans are fallible, and we put it there, and we need to address it and get rid of it if we can. Religion, on the other hand, is dogmatic, and I would argue that it has to be, or at least the religion that I would follow has to be dogmatic, because I am not a moral relativist. To me, something that is evil now was evil back then and will always be evil. That is a dogmatic position, because it doesn't matter how much evidence you give to me that killing someone is not actually bad. I will ignore it. I will say, no, killing is bad, full stop. I don't give a shit what kind of scenario you are putting me in. Killing another human being is bad. It's always been bad. It will always be bad. That is dogmatism. I am in no way being objective, and I don't care, because this is something that I feel deeply about from a faith-based perspective. And I would like my religion, the structure for which I practice my faith, I would like it to be rigid. I would like it to be a structure that I can depend on. I want it to be something that is unchanging, relatively speaking. Something that I can count on, something that I can go to, something that isn't going to be data-driven, isn't going to say one day, oh, well, killing people actually is kind of okay. If, this. Or stealing from people, is okay. Lying to people, that's actually not sinful. And yes, I am referring to a certain person because he actually said that as a fucking pastor. Now, the caveat that I will make to that is that that religion can get it wrong. If a religious or a dogmatic viewpoint is contrary to the teachings of the main dude, of the main man, and I'm not talking about Lobo, the main man, then it was never wrong. So this prohibition on homosexuality, homosexual love that Christians have had for a very, very long time was never right to begin with. So to me, that is the only change that I would find to be acceptable within religion. Religion is dogmatic. It stands the test of time. It doesn't matter where the winds are blowing. It stands as a pillar upon which, a rock, if you will, upon which to anchor your moral compass to. It's probably a bad analogy, but I'm going to go with it. I'm going to stand by it. So religion, in that sense, is the exact opposite of science. Is that religion relies on dogmatism. And I don't think this is a bad thing. And actually, I would argue that it is actually a good thing. Because if you do not have dogmatic practices, then your religion, at least from my experience, particularly in, say, the Wiccan Way, which has really no dogmatic practice, well, except for spellcraft, but I'm not going to get into that, doesn't really have too many dogmatic pillars to latch onto. It's very amorphous. It's very, there's no direction to it, and I find that to be problematic because I think that morality and moral teachings, again, are absolute. I do not believe that certain things are allowable in certain situations based on someone else's opinion. So moral teachings need to be dogmatic, but not to the point that they are contrary to the teachings of the main man. So, science is not dogmatic because, again, theories, we accept theories. Well, first off, we don't prove anything. Science never proves anything. I'm sure you've heard this before. It can't prove anything because science is always provisional and science is always limited in its scope. By its very nature, a measurement has uncertainty. That tells you that you cannot even know something. You cannot know the length of this table with absolute certainty. You cannot prove that this table is, 4 feet wide? You're always going to have uncertainty. So science cannot prove anything. We have theories that we hold on to because they're useful. We hold to general relativity because so far it hasn't been diametrically proven wrong. Stephanie, a ruler that does not have an uncertainty to it, and then we'll talk. I buffered, so I think my memory is dying. Let me kill this, kill that. Let's kill that. I may have to actually end this stream fairly. I actually only wanted to stream for about an hour, but I do definitely want to make this point. So, sorry, Stephanie, I'm going to have to move aside from there. If someone else wants to continue to engage. Like I said, I want to get this before my computer dies. Yeah. So, religion, dogmatic. I would argue that it has to be, which is why it is not science, and science is not religion. Science does not put forth a worldview, a subject or an objective worldview of any sort, stating whether or not something is good or evil. Now, I will end this with a somewhat of a non sequitur. I am a staunch defender of the division between church and state. And that works for both sides. And I lost a friend out of this because of this. I do not believe that it is right, that it is actually moral for the government to legislate a dogmatic belief, dogmatic religious belief, and of course I'm talking about abortion, because there is no non-religious argument for why abortion should be illegal. I mean, you can talk about murdering the kid, but there are a lot of ways that you can get away with murder from a legal standpoint. Also, from a legal standpoint, the law does not indicate that the child is actually alive at that point. Age, which a lot of legal things are based on, is determined from the point of birth, not from the point of conception. And so from a legal standpoint, if the law has anything to say on whether or not a unborn child is in fact a legal or a person whom could be murdered, then it's against that. It doesn't support that. So I do not. So to me, abortion is a thoroughly religious dogmatic viewpoint, and it cannot. And it is immoral to legislate that onto a population on a population where 100% of the population does not believe in that same dogmatism. Now, on the other hand, I do not believe that it is moral or appropriate for the government to force a Catholic priest to divulge what is going on in the confessional. It is against canon law. So if you're going to have a wall between church and state, then it is a wall and not a doggy door, or I can't think of the right analogy. If one can't influence the other, then the other can't influence the one. The reason why I lost a friendship is because it was, I think, Louisiana basically upheld a law or created a law that basically said that if a pedophile were to confess their sins to a Catholic priest, then the Catholic priest is not obligated to report that, unlike a health professional who's a mandatory reporter. He found that wholly objectionable and wholly and morally objectionable, and honestly, he decided that I was not worth having a continued friendship with, which I am. Still bothers me to this day. Hey, thank you, Judy, for the €12. I appreciate it. Now, I will clarify my position on this. If you are a Catholic priest and Jeffrey Epstein comes into your confessional and says, "Hey, I've got an island full of underage kids that I, pimp out to other people," then it is the moral obligation of the priest to break canon law and report his ass anyway. If he gets defrocked because of that, well, then he gets defrocked because of that. Personally, I think God is going to be okay with it. I think God is actually going to like that better than sticking to canon law. So, do I think that a priest is obligated morally to report a pedophile? Yes. Yes, I do. I am fervently in the belief that priests should be able to break the seal of confessional based on certain just horrendous actions from the petitioner. because for a number of different reasons that involve getting the petitioner to actually atone for their actions. None of this can happen in the dark. And to me, canon law is not higher than moral law. And not putting this person's actions out there for the community is endangering said community. And in that way, I think that priests have a moral obligation to protect the community. And by not reporting this person, they are violating that trust. So Clive Rowe, I would say that they are. If you are going to hold to church and state, then they are. Now, if you do not, now there is an argument to be made that there should be no wall between church and state, in the fact that church really should not exist, or should not exist as any sort of legal entity. Okay, I suppose I can get behind that. Essentially, I have my own qualms about whether or not churches should be tax exempt. I can easily see a reason for them not to be. I am swayed. I have heard arguments on both sides. I recognize that, if someone put forward on a ballot, hey, let's get rid of tax exemption for churches, I could sign. Yeah, I could say yes to that. But if, again, I am a firm believer in church and state, in a separation between church and state, because the pendulum swings in the other direction. You can have regimes that are oppressive to religious freedom. And so, again, I am an absolutist on this. It goes back to my old all or nothing days. Either we respect the laws of a religion, or we don't. We do not get to pick and choose which religious laws are okay for them to have and which ones aren't. Now, from an American standpoint, what we can do is we can basically say that, all right, if your religion, for example, says that, states that, supports genital mutilation, then your religion is not a religion in our country. And therefore does not get religious protections. That is the only way for me to sort of get around, or have someone sort of get around the wall of church and state, is by officially not recognizing a religion. And I will be honest, I have no problem with polygamy. If there is a religion that, say, the Church of Latter-day Saints, I'm not familiar with the religious justifications for polygamy. I don't even know if it is justified within the church. But if the practice is done morally, I don't see why polygamy should be illegal. Particularly since if it is a religious practice, if it is something that is holy to a group of folks, then they should be allowed to do it. Rastafarians should be allowed to smoke weed until the cows come home. If that is sacred to them, they should be allowed to smoke it. So that is my position on that. So yeah, the crimes that the church has committed are even worse. I really, again, I want to emphasize this because I don't want to lose another friendship over this. The Catholic Church has done evil shit. People within the Catholic Church have done vile and evil shit. The people who have who have taken advantage of children, the priests who have taken advantage of children, the priests who have taken advantage of nuns, the nuns who have separated women from their own children, These people need to be found. They need to be prosecuted under the law, and if found guilty, put in jail. Full stop. These are not practices that are supported by canon law. They are not part of the religion. But the church has allowed these practices to exist, which is one of the reasons why I ain't a Catholic anymore. Because I could not take the evil which resides in the core of the church. And so I want to be crystal on my viewpoint of the church and its standpoint in history. The church has a reckoning coming, and God, I hope I see it. I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know. I don't know how it can be done. But if the church refuses to give over, I'm talking out of my ass here because I know none of the specifics about these situations. But if you're looking into the allegations of a pedophile, and you want records of what the church is, of where this person is, or what have you, I don't believe that's not providing that information. I do not believe is against canon law. Is not the Curia has made no statement about that. Therefore, if the church refuses to provide that information, they are obstructing justice and should be held accountable to it. So, again, absolutely crystal on this is that I believe that if a practice is supported by the law of the church, not church practice, the law of the church, then it should be legal. So, and I could be very wrong. It could be that the tactics that the church has used to protect their evil priests are protected by canon law. I could be wrong there, but I highly, highly doubt it. So yeah, and that's just kind of touching the tip of the iceberg for that. So, I am not, again, I don't know how crystal I can be on this. I'm not excusing the church. I do not want to give a church, any church, a get out of jail free card to do evil. That is not what I'm saying. I am saying that I do not believe that it is justified or moral for a government to tell a religion how it should do its practices. Unless, period. But unless, and the only way to get around that, like I said, in my eyes, is to denounce that religion as not being a religion, is to basically revoke the religion status of it. And I also recognize that there are probably huge holes in my logic that you can drive semi-trucks through. And I would love to have discussions about this with people to further my thinking on this. But this is my standpoint at this point. This is how I hold true, and so forth. Are we still fighting the institution crisis? I'm not entirely certain what you mean by institution crisis. So, Roshi, generally religions allow polygamy, but each wife has to have their own household, financially limited. Yes. So, again, if it is moral, I guess you can say, if it is not exploitative, if polygamy does not exploit any of the wives, or if whatever the word is for having multiple husbands, if anyone actually practices that ever in the history of the universe, so long as it doesn't, the parties are not exploited in any way, then I believe that it should be moral. So, and Howdy, Tony. So, Stephanie says that churches are for-profit ventures. Sadly, I would pretty much agree with that assessment. Even the churches I think, are for-profit organizations, at least to some degree or another. Again, very much like how science is not perfect because it is composed of human beings, any church is not going to be perfect because of human beings. And human beings are, in my opinion, inherently selfish. And so are going to look for ways to enrich themselves in any endeavor that they come from. So yeah. What about a religion that supports sati? Widows throwing themselves on funeral pile? How about honor killings? Is Rob going to ban religions with these practices? That is an excellent point, Clive. And I would say yes. I would say, again, I would say that it is the obligation of the government to denounce these practices as not being religious. Like, denounce the religion as not being valid because it holds to the practices of honor killings, genital mutilations, whatever sati is. I'm assuming that means widows throwing themselves on funeral pyres. Although that one, if they're willing to kill themselves, yeah. So long as, anyway, answer your question is yes, I would ban them. Investiture crisis, whether or not clerics are subject to secular law, and the law does ban the Hindu practice of widow burning. If the Islamic and Hindu faiths practice or advocate for those practices, then yes, I believe they should be banned in the United States. So, do I believe that all forms of Islam endorse these practices? I don't. And I would need to see strong evidence to suggest that they do. So I am not saying that Islam should be banned as a religion. I am just saying that the Islamic faith that practices that has these practices and demands that they be done, those should be banned from the United States. And yes, I realize that this is getting into a very nuanced area. I am simply laying down the principles in which of what I believe. Now, when we get into like specifics, yeah, that needs to be done outside of a YouTube chat. Because again, very much like the current, well, not current, the ongoing and ever-present, seemingly, Israeli-Palestinian conflict, there's a lot of nuance there. I don't think there's so much nuance with the war in Gaza at the moment. I think there's pretty much a clear good and bad in that scenario. But in terms of Israel and the history of Israel and Palestine, and particularly Hamas, that is a very hairy situation. And I, for one, am not going to take an absolute position. I am not going to have really any opinion on that at all, because I know not nearly enough to speak on it. I can say things like, I don't believe that if a terrorist is suspected to be in an apartment building, that it is okay to blow up the apartment building, including everyone else in it who is not a terrorist. I don't think that is okay. I don't care who's involved. That just is bad. That is evil. So, but two-state solution, whatever, no idea. nuance. I say this because someone suggested a Professor Day video to me, and then Icon Science that had some thoughts on Dave and his viewpoints on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So, okay. Like I said, I'm basically going to end it there. I want to keep my live streams to about an hour. Also, because my computer is slowly fucking dying. But yeah, I just felt, again, just to recap for those who came in late, the reason why I came on today is twofold. One, because the EPA administrator basically referred to climate science as a religion and that it was a hoax. And when I read the book read the first chapter of Dr. Young's book, where he again parrots the idea that modern scientific thought is godless, I felt that I needed to respond, and I probably will respond. I probably will do more of these in the future because this sort of thing is becoming more and more prevalent. And while I don't think that I don't want to debunk into things. I'm not interested in doing debunks, never have been. There are people who are far better at it than I am. But I do want to express, as both a scientist and a Christian, where I stand on these issues and where I think that Christians are just in the wrong when it comes to things that are being done in the name of Christ in this country. So, all right. Yes, Kitty. This is Luna. Luna, you want to say hi? You want to say hi to the studio audience? No? Okay. She's just sniffing it. Sorry. About to squish my cat. Anyway, good night all. I hope you enjoyed this. If you like this sort of thing, please like, share, subscribe. More astronomy content is ongoing. If you'd like to support me, then please become a channel member. I will be putting more, I will be putting out more content that is members only, that talks more about the insides of the Landau mission and the observatory itself. If you would like to support me, if you'd like to support the observatory, please consider sending me money through PayPal. I am going to be discontinuing my Patreon because I haven't used it in years, and so I will be getting rid of that when I remember to do so. So, yeah. Peace out. Clear skies.